I can't tell you how many times over the last 10 years that I drove an electric car and said to myself, man, I love having an electric car, but I wish it were a Lexus. If that's you, this is your car. I'm Michael Drives, and this is the 2023 Lexus RZ 450e luxury trim in Ether. This is Lexus' first all-electric SUV. In fact, it's Lexus' first all-electric car, period. This car has 308 horsepower, all-wheel drive through dual motors, front and rear, and it has a range of 220 miles. Now that 220 miles of range, that's on 18-inch wheels. The car we have here has 20-inch wheels that were standard on the luxury trim. That gets 196 EPA estimated miles. And that 196 miles is if you're in the range mode, not eco, not comfort, not sport. So what that means is, bring it into normal comfort driving, that's going to drop it down to a little bit under 160 miles of range. That's the white elephant in the room. Now, I will say that this range isn't all that bad in daily use. In fact, I recently took a trip from Washington, D.C. up to Manhattan in New York City, and I stopped to charge one time. I left with a fairly full charge, and I made it all the way to my destination with just one fast charging stop in between. And when I was in New York, I fast charged, or I regularly charged with a level 2 charger, we'll call it regular charging, and stopped once on the way back from New York and made it to Washington, D.C. So it's very livable, it's very doable, a bit over 200 miles from here to New York. So if this is your second car, think about how many miles you actually drive every day. If this is your only car, it does have fast charging, but that fast charging isn't so fast. It's capped at 150 kilowatts. That's on the much lower end. So smaller battery size, slower charging speed. This is not the long-range road trip every month car. This is the best car you could probably drive around town and go to the country club, go to the grocery store, run all your errands. How many miles do you drive in a day? How many miles do you drive your car before you have to stop and go to the facilities, to the restroom? Just a few years ago, there are plug-in hybrids that had 20, 30, 50 miles of all-electric range, and that was good enough for the daily driving of hundreds of thousands of people. Now we can get almost 200 miles of range out of the car. Now, another thing to note about that 220 mile range, say you have 18-inch wheels, that range mode turns off the air conditioning, which is a big deal killer. So don't even look at that number. Look at the number in comfort mode when you evaluate this car and see what your range is. Again, with the 20-inch wheels, for me, that's about 156 miles of range, way more than the 5, 7, 10 miles I would do in daily driving. The 2023 Lexus RZ comes in 2 trim levels. You've got premium and then you have luxury. The premium will look like a Lexus on the outside with smaller wheels. The luxury will feel like a Lexus when you're driving. And what does that mean? Well, it adds ultra suede interior, it adds acoustic glass, Mark Levinson sound system, larger wheels, among interior illumination and many other things. So you're really gonna drive a Lexus, and the price difference is about $5,000, $6,000. It's not that different. This is the luxury trim. Of course, it's the top trim. It has a few extra options, like the wheel color. It has some puddle lights, a few just little extra add-ons, but this is the premium trim. That's the one I would go with. Let's take a look at this car. We'll take a look at the exterior. We're gonna take a look at the interior, the cargo area, and we're gonna take it for a drive, and I'll give you my fabulous favorites and not so favorites about the Lexus RZ. Now, let's get a little bit into the design. We have, instead of the normal spindle grille, because the electric car doesn't need a grille, you have this very smooth front end on the front bumper cover. And Lexus is calling this the spindle body. I think it's gorgeous. It's purposeful. There's no fakeness to it. There's not an insert where it was a gas car and there's like a plastic cover here. This is beautifully done. One of the options that this car has on it is, you can't tell right now, but this at night, you can. This is an illuminated badge. It hides the radar cruise control. Very nice there. This car has active shutters down here, so when the car needs some room to cool the battery or cool the radiator for the air conditioning, it can bring that in, or it can close it off for better aerodynamics. I love this color ether, and I love the design of the car. The side profile of this car is gorgeous. The front end is gorgeous. The rear is gorgeous. I love the way Lexus is spelled out on the rear tail light sort of cluster that spans the entire width of the car. Sort of a nod to Porsche. And I think it works really well. It's beautifully integrated. There's not an angle of this car that's really terrible. And this is the RZ, so it's the size of a Lexus RX, right? But we're thinking beyond zero here, zero emissions. That's why it's got the name RZ. It's even got more space inside. There's no center tunnel on the floor, and we'll get to that when we get on the inside. One thing to note here, you can get, and this is a thing with Toyota and Lexus, a black sort of hood and black, body parts here on the bumper cover. Don't do it. Don't do it. This looks so good the way it is, and it's just gonna, I don't know. It's a personal preference. I'm not a fan of the two-tone on the front. I totally understand a two-tone, a different color roof with different color paint color car. That's awesome. Mini Cooper kind of pioneered that back in the day, and probably a few other automakers. Stick with the solid color, save your money, buy a magic glowing Lexus badge on the front, and maybe something else. At the front of the car, I've unlatched the hood release, so let's see what's under there. Do we have a frunk? Do we have a giant electric motor? I don't know. Let's find out. So I'm gonna slide this open here, and slide it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so there's no strut to hold this open, but this is a Lexus. You don't need to go in here because one, there's no frunk. Two, it's an electric car and it's a Lexus, so it's probably never going to need any work. There are some fluids you can refill, but that's it. There's the battery if you need to help someone who's broken down on the side of the road, jumpstart their car. So you've got the lead acid battery sitting on top, and you've got your fluids to refill, but that's it. This is for your Lexus dealer. Let them take care of you. They are excellent. You love visiting them if you are a Lexus owner currently. If not, you should really experience the Lexus dealership experience because they're one of the best. So nothing to see under here. There are things, you don't need to care about them. Let's move on. On the side of the Lexus RZ, you have the side of the Lexus RZ. Moving up here, we have integrated turn signal LED lights, and then we have the charge port. Now, that is where you are going to, always takes me a couple times, open the door, you've got your charge port here, your CCS combo connector, a nice little flap, no plugs to hang out and dangle. I really like that design. And then, so you know, you're going to push the charger there, and there you go. It's locked when the car is locked, so you're good to go. On the wheels, these are the 20s. They look so good, but they eat range. They eat 20 miles of range. So if you want a slightly more comfortable ride, you know this is not going to be a sports car, and you want 20 miles of extra range, go with the smaller wheel size, down to 18-inch wheels. But the rest of the car, just gorgeous and clean. I really like the design of this car. Let's take a look at the back end. Here we are at the back of the RZ. Just look at this gorgeous rear end. These tail lights go from one end all the way to the other. Lexus is spelled out beautifully in a very nice spaced out font. Again, that nod to Porsche. Up here you have these fins, as I pointed out earlier. There is no rear windshield wiper. Do you need it? You've got cameras. I don't think you do. I've not needed it to this point, so that's up to you. But everything is just clean, you know, there's no pollution pipes down at the bottom. It's the first Lexus I've ever driven that doesn't emit carbon and exhaust out the back. Down here you've got badging, and a lot of badging. So it says RZ450E, Direct 4, meaning all-wheel drive, meaning it's got a motor in the front and the back. In fact, this car is only available, at least in the US, in currently all-wheel drive version, dual motors. So that's what you're gonna get. Let's take a look inside the cargo area now. I think that I can just give this a little kick, and voila, it's going to open. And here is your cargo area. So I like this. I complained about this in the Genesis GV60 that just had a pull-out sort of roller shade here. And while functional for hiding things, it's not easy to see things once you fill up the trunk and you need to reach something in the back, here you can. This is great. This folds in half, so it can be removed, folded in half, and moved out, so you can actually carry larger things. Super useful because it's a hatch design. Down here under the floor, there's a little handle and there's some storage. Your level 1 charger. So I'm gonna wrangle this big thing out of here. It seems like quite a lot, but there's a lot of length on this cord, and you can plug into any wall outlet and charge any 3-prong wall outlet and charge your car. So I'm gonna drop this back in here. This is included in the RZ. That's not an extra cost charge to charge, but we're gonna drop that back in there. You can hide a few other things down here. Super handy. Rear seats, again, if you need to fold them, you can kind of get your hands up in here and give them a push shut. So there is access from the back of the car, not like some other cars where you actually have to go around and flip the seats forward. So super easy. Lexus knows their audience, they know their customer. This rear cargo area will hold 3 sets of golf clubs and 1 very large suitcase and a couple smaller suitcases. Beautiful puddle lamp up here, so it's gonna LED light the whole area so that you can see things. There's a first aid kit strapped in here on the side. That's a nice addition. And there is a 12-volt cigarette style power outlet over there on the left. Welcome to the interior of the Lexus RZ. Now Lexus calls this interior color combination Thunderstorm and Macadamia, which is both exciting and delicious. And the interior actually is as well. Again, on this luxury trim, you have these plush ultra suede seats, which are kind of like a ultra suede sneaker or something like that, but they're really comfortable and they breathe really well. Really well. Now the seats are heated and cooled, of course, and you can control that in this large 14-inch screen, which I will need to turn on the car to do that so that you can get a little glimpse of this, and I'll run through this later. Over here in the center console, you have a nice shift button, and it took me about 5 minutes to figure out how this worked once the car was dropped off. So you actually, once you put your foot on the brake, you're going to push down on the silver ring and turn it to the left, of course, for reverse, and to the right for drive. So super simple setup once you actually know how to use it. Again, this gorgeous 14-inch screen here. This is so nice. And then behind the steering wheel, you've got this tiny little old sort of TFT, I think, thin film transistor screen, which packs a ton of information for the driver in a very tiny amount of space, and it doesn't take up the whole gauge cluster, and that feels less premium. In fact, it reminds me of the Toyota Lexus days of the Prius, which had about 3 or 4 screens all over the car several generations ago that didn't match in resolution, in color, or anything. They were just kind of like, here's some information, and here's all of it. I would love to have like a minimal version of that screen because it's a lot. And then, of course, this model in the luxury has the heads-up display, head-up display, and there's one thing to note about the steering wheel controls. These on both ends, it doesn't say what they do. And if you had the heads-up display on and you take this car for a drive, say you've never driven it before, like me last week, and you've got your sunglasses on, you can't see the heads-up display. So I'm wondering what all these buttons are for on the steering wheel and how I can just do simple things with it. Well, you can't see it because in the touchscreen, it's actually very nicely showing you when you rest your finger on the arrows that go up and to the right and the left, what they do and how you can change that with the little sort of menu button below that. I had no idea, and so I'm just pushing buttons trying to make things happen. You won't have that problem. Now, if the heads-up display is turned off, you're gonna have no issues because it's gonna now show up in the screen behind, or the gauge cluster behind the steering wheel. The gauge cluster, which there are no fake gauges, so I love that. There's actually a modern, smack in the center, speedometer that tells you exactly how fast you're going. Beautifully done, Lexus. I love that. Really cool armrest here. So the driver can open it that way and the passenger can open it this way. It's a nice dual hinge. Interesting thing to note about the dash is there is no glove box. There's no glove tray. There's nothing here. The reason is that there are radiant heaters in this model, and so they will keep your knee warm if this car comes. So you can add those in the premium trim, but I believe they come standard in the luxury trim. So as part of the automatic heating and cooling, it'll turn on your heated seats, and it will also turn on these radiant heaters. I tested it. I couldn't feel my kneecaps entirely warming up, but you'll notice this sort of mesh grid under here and under the steering wheel, and that's supposed to project some radiant heat to your kneecaps. I was even wearing shorts and I just didn't feel that. Down here in the center console, you've got your wireless Qi charger, very nice, and 3 USB-C ports, very cool. And then there are actually 2 in the back as well for a total of 5 USB-C ports. This has the, I'm gonna say this wrong, dynamic sky. This has the sunroof that when you push a button, again, a glass roof we'll call it because it does not open, unfortunately, but woo, it clears up and then you can see the sky and let in a little extra light. There is no manual roller shade. If you hit the button again, you can dim it. Where this could come in handy is if you really miss the Canadian wildfires that we had over the last several weeks in the US, you can just push this button and all you see is a hazy sky. And you're like, oh yeah, Canada sent us some smoke. Over here, another thing about this wonderful dynamic sky, something glass that can, you know, turn opaque or translucent or transparent with the push of a button, is that if you're doing something naughty and you don't want the trucker next to you to see that, well, just fog that up and you have privacy. So the RZ has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and they are both wireless and they can connect, you know, without using a cable, no cable strung. So just take your phone in your pocket, put it on the wireless charger and you're set to go. Another great thing about the phone is that you can use it as a key. As long as the car has 4G connectivity, and here's the caveat, you can, you know, walk up to the car and unlock it and do all those things. Now, if you're out hiking somewhere and there's no cell connectivity, I don't think you can use your phone to unlock and lock and drive away the car. So you might want to have your physical key with you when you're hiking, a bit of an inconvenience. With this new system, you can also say, hey Lexus, set air conditioning to 71 degrees. And if the car were on, it would actually do that. You can control the infotainment, you can control the climate with that Hey Lexus system. Again, it used Google integrated. And if you have an Apple Music or I believe an Amazon Music account, you can actually connect to it within the car and not even have to have your phone with you. It will natively have the app inside the car on board, which is really nice and sort of more integrated. One thing to note about these door latches is there's not the traditional, you know, handle that you pull and it, you know, physically unlocks the car. You have these digital door handles, and what that means is that, you know, if the car detects some, you know, bicyclist coming up, it's not going to let you out. This is just a push button. It's not a latch. So I was okay there, didn't have to worry about anything. The car was like, you can open the door. So I pushed the little button and opened the door. Falls right at your thumb. It's so nice. It's not confusing on how does this awkward new weird handle work, and it's just very clean. Love that digital door release, and that's on all 4 doors. Because this is the luxury trim, it comes with this gorgeous, it's called sort of shadow something lighting, and what it does is it projects this beautiful pattern at night. So it actually looks kind of basic during the day. It's just big, you know, panel of ultra suede, but it's gorgeous at night, and you can kind of put your hand here and play with it and see the pattern on your hand. And then the car also has, in the luxury trim, this ambient lighting that is, you can choose all these different themes or select your own custom colors, and that is great. It lights up and changes the color for everything from the footwells to the side pockets to down here where your phone lights up to the rear of the car and the door panels and the footwells. And it's just, you can actually even adjust it. You can have, you know, green in the front and blue in the back, or change that, you know, how bright you want the footwells compared to the side panels. So there's a lot of adjustability there. Everything in this screen is fairly easy to get to. I like it. I just love how big and crisp it is. And unfortunately, that makes the screen behind the gauge cluster look sort of, I don't say pedestrian, but a little bit behind the times. Let's take a look at the back seat and see what we've got back there. Well, hello there. Welcome to the back seat of the RZ. Let's take a look at this real quick. We've got USB-C ports for both passengers in the rear. Super nice, and heated seats. Because this is the luxury trim, it's going to come with rear heated seats. There is a vehicle to load, fancy name for it. There's a power outlet here, a wall outlet. Down below, it's a 120 volt, 100 watts. One thing to note about this is it's only 2-prong. So it's polarized, but if you have a 8-prong laptop charger, you need to have an adapter because it's not going to work with this. But hopefully the adapter would set you up for success there. You've got a nice center armrest here, 2 cups. These aren't adjustable in size, but there is room at you have a mug with a handle. And you don't want that spilled. There's nice lighting, LED lighting here. Again, there is a beam that goes across the glass roof, but you do have a nice large roof here, so there's no feeling of claustrophobia in the back or anything. I'm a huge fan of light interiors and not a fan of dark interiors, but this Thunderstorm and Macadamia interior feels very airy and modern and just fresh and clean, and I love that. There's enough light thing, so this is not gonna get hot sitting in the sun. Very well done, but there's a little bit darker, so it's a little bit more interesting, but it's not a dark color. It's more of a light blue. It's a very athletic blue, and this would totally be my choice, I think, even over the tan, and I think it's tan and black interior. So very nice. There are air vents back here as well that are gonna come on with the air conditioner and heating underneath. Again, you've got the digital door lock, and that's pretty much it for the back seat. So let's spin around and see a little bit more of the car. Lexus has some interesting benefits for the owners or lessees of the RZ. So Lexus will, and this is a dealer-based program, give you access to a loaner vehicle for 30 days over the period of 3 years. So you could take a road trip, a 30-day road trip at the end of 3 years, or you could take 10 days a year, borrow a gas or hybrid powered Lexus and never even think about long distance charging. I think that's a great benefit. There's also a dedicated line for RZ owners and lessees that they can call in, and there are people on the other end of the phone that are dedicated to answering questions about the battery electric vehicle specifically. So that's so important to get a hold of someone who actually knows how an electric car works and can help you out with it.
So we're about to take a drive. I just got drowned like a wet rat in the thunderstorm that we're currently having, so please excuse my new hairstyle and overall general moist appearance. But I want you to hear the sound when you mash the accelerator and sort of that auto-generated sound. I'm going to try and wait for the rain to stop for a hot second when we're out on an open road to do that. So, okay, we got the rain to stop for 1 second. I just want you to listen here. Love that sound. Oh my gosh, it sounds so good. And this car is torquey. Lots of torque, plenty of torque. It feels so good. If you're itching for torque, you're not going to be disappointed. The car drives just like you would expect a Lexus to. It's well controlled, it's comfortable. I would not get the 20-inch wheels because I like something a little bit more comfortable of a ride, and that can be achieved by having wheels that are slightly smaller in diameter. So just a note on that, but otherwise a great driving, comfortable. It's everything you expect of a Lexus. It's just electric. I want to show you one more thing, and that's going to be the automatic parking system. I think it's really cool in this car, so let's check that out. Okay, put my flashers on here and see if we can get this spot with some success. So I'm going to hit the park button here, and it says no parking space available. So let's back up and see if it will identify this spot. I know this can work well. And vehicle not stopped. Now will it let me? It sees the spot. So I'm going to hit the start button. There are lots of cars around us, but I don't have to be worried because the car is going to do the parking. So it knows exactly what it's going to do. It shows that the parking spot is there, and it's going to back up and attempt to park in that spot right now. So let's see if it will work successfully. Again, lots of traffic around. Normally this would be a nerve-wracking experience, but hey, the car says we can park in this little blue square here, this rectangle, and it's coming right in. We're between a minivan and a truck, not the easiest things to see around. It's a fairly big space, but I've used this to park in much tighter spaces. Now it's gonna pull forward a little bit. Again, my hands aren't on the steering wheel, my foot is not on the pedals. Boom, we are parked, and it shows you from a little bit of a drone footage, okay, it didn't get super close to that curb, but these cars were fairly far out, that there's room in front, there's room in back. We know we're good to go. If I want to replay that, I'm just gonna hit that button again, and there's a sort of simulated drone footage of the car in its spot so that you know that you're good to go.
Even though it's raining, today's your lucky day because you're going to get my fabulous favorites and not so favorites about the 2023 Lexus RZ. Fabulous favorite is that it is a Lexus. It's an electric Lexus. I think we've all been waiting for this. Side note, we've had the hottest June on record this past month, and in fact it was hotter by a good amount than any other June in world history. Aside from that, other fabulous favorites, the paint color. This ether is beautiful. It would absolutely be my choice. I've clicked through online. I haven't seen anything else that I was like, wow, that looks really good. Forget that two-tone hood, you don't need it. It has the Mark Levinson audio system, another favorite. That big 14-inch screen, wireless Apple CarPlay. There's so many things to like. I love the interior color combo on this specific trim. Another fabulous favorite, the range estimator on the car. While it doesn't have a large range to span, it is not only dead accurate, but you end up actually adding a few miles, so it doesn't overestimate. This is a, mosquito. This is a conservative company in general, and they're doing it right. They're not over-promising and under-delivering. They're under-promising and over-delivering. So that range estimator is dead accurate. And then my final fabulous favorite about this car is the synthetic noise it makes when you tromp the accelerator and take off. There's just this really cool mechanical sound that is, it doesn't stick around for any other time than you're really getting into it. If you were in a gas car, you'd hear that roar and all the noise and cacophony of the engine and the transmission and the road. Well, this has a synthetic sound that is actually the best one I have heard yet in a car to date that is making fake noises. But it just sounds really cool. It sounds powerful. It gives you confidence. It's a nice feature. I don't think there's a way to turn it on and off. And you don't really need to. You're never going to hear it unless you're really getting in to the accelerator. And this car will go. Again, 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. It really moves. So, you know, you're not driving a slow golf cart by any means here. You can drive it to the country club where you can get in your golf cart and drive slowly or not. So, not so favorites. The infotainment system did crash on me at one point. So the whole thing was working, but I was using the onboard nav, and all of a sudden driving along, and it just crashed and disappeared and wouldn't go back. All the other functions worked, but when I'd hit the nav button, it just didn't go anywhere. Shutting the car off and coming back to it the next morning, everything worked fine. This car can get over the air software updates, so I imagine little glitches like that are going to be worked out in the future. So that's a not so favorite. The range, you know, that big elephant in the room, it would be great, and in the future it will probably be offered with a larger battery pack. That's totally fine, but that's just a not so favorite. Okay, one more thing, slow charging. So if you're gonna have a smaller battery, if it can charge really fast, that's super great. Ooh, getting a little wet. But if it's a slow charging battery and it doesn't have a lot of range, it just makes those long distance trips where you're going, you know, 3-4 hours a little bit more tough. I will say another not so fabulous favorite is while the navigation system can route you to a destination, it will tell you that you don't have enough charge to get there, but it won't say, hey, stop and charge here. It just tells you you don't have enough charge. Now on the flip side, you can manually go into the system and as a point of interest, find local charging stations, but they're gonna find them from where you are outward, and they're not necessarily going to add it to the nav. So it takes a lot more work than it needs to. Hopefully we see that resolved in a future over-the-air software update. I know a lot of conversations have to happen with the charging companies and the automakers and the standards, but it's a big miss. If this is your everyday car and you're driving it all over town and you're just plugging it into your level 2 charger at night, you're good to go. So on that note, I'm going to hop in and stay dry. You know what? Who doesn't love a little rain? So I want to thank you for sticking with me through the end of this and watching the review on the Lexus RZ, Lexus's first all-electric car, and all-electric from the ground up, mind you. Please stick around, subscribe to the channel. I would love that. I would so appreciate that. And give me your comments in the comment section. I want to hear what you think about the car and what you think about this review. Any feedback you can provide would be awesome. Have a great day, and thank you for watching.